very warm welcome to the 6th Snowup at Grünwald. It's really great to have you all here. You took a long way to come here again. It's really nice to have you all here. We also have some presentations. And I would thank very much Henk helping setting this up, and Step. It's also part of your 20th anniversary of your company, I think.
Yeah.
And we, Reto and I from Pixmill, are also really happy to have you here. And it's more than just technical babbling that we are doing. It's more about friendship, I feel, and social engaging. And yeah, I'm really happy to have you here. And what we are gonna do today is we have a presentation from Gauke, and followed by Vasily, and then we have two videos, right? We have two videos that people are talking about AI mostly, so we are quite AI focused and what it can do, what it can help. So we're gonna see, and we're gonna discuss about that, and we are really keen on your opinions also.
We already talked about friendships and friends. They bring presents, and we felt like we have something for you, our guest. We know each other now for 8 years, both two guys from Europe. We met, by the way, in Kazakhstan, Almaty, Kazakhstan, in a hotel. It's really an honor to be here again for me personally the fourth time, and 6 meetup, and yeah, 1 meetup was online, of course. But yeah, we have a lot of things that we share in common, and there is this MODX Snowup, and we thought we need to bring a thing that is really connected to the snow.
Thank you very much. It's amazing. So it's even better than the people with the big checks. Okay, then I'll let it sit here that everyone can see it, but please focus on GP now.
Nice group. Yeah, our journey into AI. So I'm Peter from Sterk. In the last 6 months, we had like a sub team in our team where we were working on AI projects, all for clients, and we did a lot of stuff. We broke a lot of stuff, and yeah, we really feel we need to share that so we can kind of help other people avoid all those mistakes we made. And of course, we want to show off a bit. First, I want to look back at Rome, because that's also a MODX event where I spoke about AI. It was a totally different time. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about AI-assisted coding, but I guess most of the AI-assisted coding will be happening tomorrow. Then I'm going to show some AI stuff which is happening in MODX right now, stuff which people made for MODX. Then I'm going to talk about model choice, because that's one of the most important parts of the whole AI thing. And I'm going to close up with a lot of stuff that we did in our AI tool. So, about Rome. So, for me, Rome feels like ages ago, if you think about AI. I was in Rome, by the way. We also spoke about AI. And back then it wasn't new, but it felt new. A lot of people weren't working with AI yet, and but the whole AI landscape was also different. So the AI models were limited in the training size, so they could do stuff, but it was also, at the time you could still see, if you had a text written with AI, you could see that it was AI. You could definitely see that, and nowadays it's going to be harder and harder. Also, like every model had like its own purpose, so you had this model who could make text, the other one could make images. There were no multi-model models yet, really. There are now. Image generation was, well, I guess funny. It still is sometimes. Has anyone seen, for example, that video, for the Trump Gaza video? Nobody? Well, that's an example of how weird it can get. But still, image generation is getting better unless you try to do text in your images. It gets really weird. You'll see that later. But yeah, it's getting better. What also changed, and that matters a lot, is the knowledge cutoffs we had. So you had a model, it was trained on a specific piece of data, cut off at a specific date in history, usually like a few months before, and that was it. So if you try to ask something which happened last week, he didn't know it. That happened a lot because, that changed a lot because a lot of models now are able to access the internet, just use search to improve your results. For our developers, code assistance was there. I think I demoed Git Copilot in Rome, but there's so many options now, which I want to share a few with. And something we also didn't have yet, and which is quite new, is the MCP, Model Context Protocol. Does anybody, except for Mark, know what it is?
We just talked about it.
Okay, then I have something to talk about today. So, so AI-assisted coding. That's not really for today, but I still feel that I had to touch it a little bit. So I'm not going to show you how it works and what you can do. Let's do that tomorrow, because tomorrow will be a different day. We don't want to do too much talking tomorrow, but I think it's good that we as people who use it a lot. And who is using any AI system coding, by the way, here? Okay, well then, okay, good. So then tomorrow we can kind of show off some tools, how we can use it. In Rome, it was possible, but it was more like you had a file open and you could ask something to your AI code assistant, and that was it. Right now, and that was the context it was using. So if you were talking about something, it was that specific file. That was it. Right now, you can have your whole project as the context. So your AI code assistant knows everything of your project, and if you ask him something, and if you use the right tools, then it will just, if you like ask him, hey, can you make this whole project in Python instead of in PHP, then it'll just do it for all the files. And a lot of stuff will happen on the screen, but it's capable of doing that. It can write documentation, it can review pull requests, it can do everything. So we have the whole context of the whole project, which is because the models are getting more powerful. But with a model context protocol, which enables agentic coding, and agentic AI is that the AI does stuff for you, you know? So it's not just generating text or anything, it's actually doing things. Moving files, reading files, adding stuff to your calendar, making pull requests, reviewing, merging them. Anything you can come up with can be done with agentic coding and with a model context protocol. So the model context protocol is something which is currently mostly used by Claude, so from Anthropic. And if you go to modelcontextprotocol.io or that GitHub repository, you can see a list of servers which is available for the MODX context protocol. So what is a server? So let's say you're coding and you're like, okay, it would be really cool if it could also do pull requests. In that case, you add a server to enable, for example, GitHub access. Those are available servers you can just download, put in your configuration, that's it. And then you just say like, okay, review this pull request. Do you see any comments? Do you see any issues? If so, do reject it. If you see no issues at all, just approve it, merge it. Or do this code, make a pull request, and assign someone to it. That's all possible. I can save us a lot of time. It's quite new, and Mark and me and Yuko were looking at it just for a bit, and Mark's head exploded. I couldn't really explain it to him what the good use cases were, but the agentic part of AI, so that stuff is happening automatically, that's going to be a big change in our lives in the near future. This is all we're going to do about AI assisted coding. For tomorrow, I'm interested in what tools everybody's using. Has anyone used GitHub Copilot? Klein? Okay, Klein is the same as GitHub Copilot, but uses different models. It's not from Microsoft. And Klein is, and it's called Root Code now, by the way, is a fork of Klein, but where Klein has a lot of agentic capabilities, so it can do all the things you request from it in your code files. But it requests approval for everything, and some people were fed up with that and said, like, we want to have auto approval so everything happens automatically and I don't have to take approve for everything I do. Then the people made Rookline, and that was just auto approve everything. So, and that's now also back in Klein, you know how it goes, but Rookline is kind of the edgy sister of Klein. Cursor, has anyone used Cursor? I expected a fool. And Windsurf? Yeah, same thing, okay. Cursor is very well known for being very good coding IDE. It's all based on Visual Studio Code. And Cursor excels at the agentic stuff. So with Cursor you can make like a markdown file with like, I want to have this project, I want to use these libraries, and I want it to be like a to-do list app, and I want to do this, and then it makes a whole, it bootstraps the whole application for you. Cursor was really good at that. Windsurf was also really good at that, except for that Windsurf had some, I think, funding, money issues. So they kind of, they offered a subscription for that, but because they were using too much tokens, spending too much money on all the usage, they kind of had to trim down their offering. So you pay the same, but you got less. It's, so it's not being used a lot anymore. JetBrains AI is another one for the PHP Storm user. Yeah, it's Mark, Nisha. And something which was released this week with Claude Sonnet 3.7 is Claude Code. Haven't used it yet, but it appears that Claude Sonnet 3.7 is, it doesn't realize that, but if you look at the usage statistics right now, Claude Sonnet 3.7 is already the most used model for AI assisted coding. So I'm quite surprised that I didn't see as many hands. I expected more hands. So it's going to be an interesting weekend. I think we can teach each other a lot of stuff. So that's going to be nice. Then we have AI in MODX. These are some, and maybe there's more, but I just listed some. Are there any Babel users here for multi-language in MODX? Made by Tommy Shagomi, who's not here this year. Then we also know Babel Translate. Babel Translate is like, so with Babel you can say like, I have this resource and I want to make a translation from English into like the German context of my website, for example. And then with Babel Translate, it's like an extension add-on for the Babel add-on that you can use either like DeepL or OpenAI to automatically translate the whole page already. So you have like, let's say you have an English page, it's about the Snowup, and you want to also have it in French. You just say like, okay, Babel, make this page in a French website, and then also translate it and it's French. And we tested it, it's awesome. So DeepL was already really good. DeepL is a really good translation engine. The reason we added OpenAI to it was that we feel that we can influence it more. But more about that later, I guess. AI Kit by Mark. I hope you all saw the newsletter. Promising. Oh, are you going to show anything, I guess, maybe?
The plan was to show tomorrow, but if
Cool.
we can see at the end of
Yeah, let's see, yeah. We see it this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, okay, nice. And yeah, Mod AI by MODX. So a lot of people are doing stuff, and I like what you said in your newsletter, Mark, that we appear to be doing a lot of stuff, everybody, and we're all like kind of finished at the same time, and then bam, everything's there, and we could have collaborated. But it's the story of our lives, I guess. So. Anyway, it's nice initiatives. Then I saw a demo from Eternity. What was it about? I think that was that you had like the AI icons behind fields where you could generate, let's say you have an info text field, you could click a button and it would generate content for your info text field. And that could be done for all the fields. And you have MODX, I can pronounce it, from Jens Wittmann. And what he did was that it automatically generated alt texts for your images based on the image. So as the input, it would be the image that you had, and we generate an alt text for it. So what I should talk most about is our AI content assistant. This is what we have been working on for the last 6 months. Easy to use tools for a specific purpose. So let's say, oh, I want to generate some text here and that's it. You know, it's great, does what it needs to do, but we want to take it a step further. We want to create full-page content in MODX using OpenAI. I'll get to that later. And what we felt was very important was also that we could use data and content from our clients, because our clients have a ton of content laying around in PDFs, in their internal systems, and that needs to be used to kind of train, or the model at least needs to know about it, so that the content that is writing is about the data from the client. So it's going to be really client-specific content what we generate. And the generated page has to be content blocks, because that's what we use everywhere. Yeah, so the requirements were that it should be a full page, including SEO suite data, so the intro text, SEO text. Content blocks, what I said. This is like a duplicate of the previous slide, really. Influence, tone of voice, and target groups. So you can get generalized content, right, if you use a model. You can say like, oh, be a bit more strict or formal or whatnot. But for your client, you kind of have a tone of voice. There's a brand document somewhere for your client explaining what your brand voice is, what your tone of voice is, also what your target groups is. And we feel that when you make content, at least that's how content people work, they have all these things, target group, tone of voice, everything's clear, and based on that, they write their content. So that's where we want it to be better, is that our AI model also knows about that and will write that way. So that needed to be in there. What we also kind of later wanted, this wasn't an initial requirement, but we kind of made it a requirement along the way, is the ability to reprompt. So reprompting is like you do your initial prompt, like, hey, model, do this and this for me and write it. And you're like, yeah, it's not really what I wanted, and I want this part to be different. And then you do another prompt to modify that, and that's called a reprompt. So we wanted everything we generate to be repromptable. So it's going to be more like a chat, and you could like select parts of the text that you did like, and say like, hey, I want this text to be not about this, but about that. And important was multilingual. So all the clients which we made this for have multilingual websites, so it needs to be possible to kind of have that in there. This is the initial version we have, and it's made with OpenAI. And it's made with OpenAI assistants. So what you see here is 3 options you have with the prompt. And a button here, and there's a button as well. Forget about those. So the language, the only thing this does is that it writes the content in the correct language and puts the page in the correct context. And the assistant contains the tone of voice and the target groups and stuff like that. So this is like a big mashup which will be put into the AI model, including your prompt, what the article should be about, and then that's all then processed by the model and it will generate something. But about the assistants. So what I think everybody knows is that, let's say you go to chatgpt.com and you start chatting. You can also do that using the API, that's the chat completions API. You can't do much there. Yeah, I do guess you can do some system instructions there, like say like, hey, always speak in a funny voice, or I'll do it like this or that. But what it was unable to do at the start of everything, we were unable to say like, okay, we also want to have these PDF documents there, or these markdown documents from the client. We couldn't add it there because we didn't know how to do it, because our knowledge was too limited for that. And then we found out that OpenAI also offers an OpenAI Assistants API. And an assistant in OpenAI is like a combination of, you select the model, the system instructions, and some other options like temperature or whatnot. But you can also select a vector store. And a vector store is nothing else like a bucket of files which is processed with every request. So, and the files you put in there could be like maybe the brand manual, maybe a catalog of all the products, or just relevant information which the model could use to create better content. So for this particular client, it's Ameland, it's an island. in the Netherlands, and what we did there is we did most of the content from the website, which could already be in the model, of course, because the model is trained on public data. But we exported all the data from the site, at least the data we needed. We put that in JSON files, and that's what we uploaded in a vector store. So our theory was that if we put it in a vector store, it'll have more weight in the whole generation of the content. So it will make that more important than what is already in the model. So that's why we chose for OpenAI, with the OpenAI Assistant API, to create our first version. And it works quite well. So, Hendrik, any ideas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fixed hole in buffer.
Capturing on Ameland and make a list.
This is fine.
Mention examples of hotspots, shops, Ether.
Ether.
It's a really bad prompt. But let's see what. So I can also click edit here and modify the system instructions which are empty. Okay, and what can I do here? Yeah, that's what we ask. So just do create, and now we're gonna go into the contact the AI OpenAI API, and we're doing that through our own. We call it a middleman. So we're not directly connecting to OpenAI right now, but there's a thing in between. I'll explain that later. But so everything we do from MODX is first sent through our middleman, and stuff is happening there, and then we send it over to OpenAI, then we get it back, process it, and send it back here.
Because it was empty.
Yeah.
You have to choose another persona.
I asked you,
That's great things.
Isa?
Now, what he did, he was telling you
Yeah.
there was no data,
Yeah.
so it was good.
In which one do I need?
For everyone, I think. Let me see. When something is in there, you can look at it. So what he does, Gauke, he told us there was no persona data.
Yeah.
That was good because he didn't create something, but it wasn't good. And now you have the right persona.
I hope so. Maybe we even get a blue screen of that now. That would be nice.
You choose everyone. I target one everyone.
Yeah. So, while waiting, I can kind of explain what we're doing. So, at first, I think like 6 months ago, what we did is how did we start Yuga? Did we first do the JSON in the message to there?
Yeah, we had a lot of different iterations.
Yeah, because what we do is we kind of want, content blocks in the end is just JSON, right? So we wanted the JSON structure to be filled with content by the AI model. Well, that turned out shit. But it was surprisingly that it didn't kind of break the JSON. Sometimes it would just not have enough power, tokens, whatever, to finish it, so it would break halfway, so that didn't work. So we need to find a better way to get the JSON. Is this going good or not? Anyway, so in the end we found out that for the specific model you can use structured
output.
Structured output. So you can define your JSON up front, and instead of just messaging it, you could use a system within the OpenAI model to define the JSON you want, and that costs us less tokens, less power from the model, so the tokens that saved there could be used and spent on creating the actual content. Because that's what you're struggling with all the time. You're doing stuff with your model, it's doing something. Nice! I did something! But yeah, so when you're working with AI APIs, that's one of the things you're going to struggle with. Like, this is a weird response I'm getting, and it's usually because you don't have enough tokens. So a model has always limited input and output tokens. sometimes you send too much information, sometimes you want too much information back. So let's say you ask for like, I want an essay of 3,000 words and it stops with 1,200 words. So like, how did that happen? It's probably tokens. So the model is not powerful enough to do what you want. So this is the output. And we did it in Dutch apparently. Okay.
Dit is in persoonlijk Dutch.
Oh. Persona Dutch. Doesn't matter. So it's in Dutch. So for just many Dutch people in there. And what you see here is the content block structure. It's not as nice as content blocks itself, but these are the blocks that we defined in the template which we selected before. So nice, cool. So let's say we want to have this one here and say that it says that enjoy your fresh fish in a cozy atmosphere after a day on the water. Rephrase this to eating meat because we don't need to do because. Just do it. and then we put the whole conversation back. This is what we do it, and then we get a result with. It's going to take a while. So what you see now is that it's taking a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also because of the OpenAI Assistant API, which is slow. And so we spent a lot of time making it faster, and I think we spent too much time on that. And in the end, I think it was you who said like, well, why don't we just use the chat completions API, which is way faster? But we said, well, we can do that because we don't have a vector store there. And the vector store was the place where you can add your own files, which will be and the model will look into those files to see if there's relevant content in there based on your prompt, and then write the content. So, and what we did, and we kind of knew that there were different solutions for that, because where OpenAI has a vector store included in their model, there's also external vector stores, just standalone vector stores you can use. But when we started, we found it very scary. How does this shit work? How do we even work with this? And we were of course on a budget, so we were always like, I don't know, we should start with this whole journey to vector store because maybe it will take too much time. In the end, we did do it for another client, which I will also demo. And that client is using a different combination of tools. So it's still using OpenAI, but it's using the chat completions API. Which is way faster, and where in the assistant API we have a lot of stuff mentioned in the system instructions and in the assistant, we just send those instructions as messages to the chat completions API. And it's faster, and what we did there is that since we use the chat completions API and can't use the internal vector store anymore, we need to find another vector store because that client has a lot of products that contains a lot of information, manuals and whatnot. So, the vector stores we tried is Chroma. It's an open source vector store, but then we ran into some hosting challenges, and then we tried Pinecone.
Abbreviate.
Yeah, we also tried Abbreviate. Yeah.
Well, maybe it took too long now, and that's I'm learning too that maybe from the service of OpenAI in this case.
Yeah.
That's the case. This is too long.
Yeah.
So
it
it's
is.
2:30. So we experienced a lot of we said it, speed issues
Yeah.
at the end of the afternoon. And one of the assumptions is that US is awake.
Yeah.
Everybody's waking up and using the
So,
model.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we have the problem now because it takes 1 or 2 minutes, but it's too long.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. And I think at chat completions it's the same because OpenAI, that's why you have to look at the other models of course. But
Yeah, and what we also have not tried yet is there is also like on Microsoft Azure and AWS, there's also like OpenAI models which you can use. And then you probably run into less performance issue because it's your own hosted version, which you cannot modify, but you can use it. And yeah, that might be better, but I haven't tried it yet. Something with time available. Anyway, let's see if my meat is in there. Well, I don't even know which one it was.
Oh, I think it's scroll to it.
Yeah, you scroll to it.
Yeah.
That's what we got.
Enjoy delicious meat dishes in a cozy atmosphere after a day in the water. Well, perfect. So let's just create a resource now.
Jalbert, maybe some addition.
Yeah.
Jalbert didn't ask for a specific restaurant.
No.
It was too bad, but whatever. But he can come up with restaurants in a database which have meat if it's in the database, in the factor database. So that's meat is whatever, but you want to know which restaurant.
This is the end result. And the images are placeholders, by the way. That's also on our wish list. But so when we first demoed this, it's always the same with clients, because wow, maybe I should have mentioned that before. Why are we creating this tool again? I think all of our clients have the same issue. They have a marketing team or a marketing person, and they do a lot of stuff which isn't even marketing. So they don't have a lot of time left for actual marketing and content generation. So they always have time issues, resource issues to actually create content. And this, for them, would be an ideal solution to this could take you a day to make. Now it's still long, but it's just a few minutes, and then you do some rephrasing, reprompting, and you're done. So their first initial response was like, holy shit, finally we can get some stuff done. And that's what we made the tool for. And so the initial response is always like, oh my god. And then what initially happened was that because we haven't really read the content now, when you start reading the content, you sometimes find weird things, hallucinations. Who doesn't know what a hallucination is? What?
Rabbit.
It makes stuff up. So the model can make stuff up which isn't real, but it sometimes doesn't. So we had some weird hallucinations, for example, that we asked for restaurants from Ameland, from the island, and then it just made up random restaurants that didn't even exist. So just names, and we googled it, they didn't exist, not on the island, also not in the world. So it just made up random restaurants because it couldn't find 10 restaurants which we requested. You could only find like 5, so we made 5 up. So that's hallucination. So we had a lot of stuff like that happening. So we've been tweaking a lot around with the temperature of the model. So by default it's 1. I think we set it to 0.6 or something. So then it's less creative, but it will also make up less. So it will hallucinate less. We had a lot of issues with, because these templates are made up with this is a content field and it has 500 words, for example. So, and that's for every block it's like that. Sometimes it just didn't get to that amount of words that we requested, and that's the limit of the model. Maybe I can show that later. What I mentioned about image generation, so all the images here are generated by AI from Gemini in this case, because we use Google Workspace. Google Workspace has Google Slides. And since a while we have Gemini, which is Google's AI model, is integrated in Google Workspace, and you can just click the magic AI button and do stuff. So all the images here were generated by AI, but whenever you have something with text in it, for example, I wanted something about requirements, so it brought it as requirements. So yeah, it can write, it can count. It also cannot count, by the way. AI cannot count. It's really weird. Anyway, about model search. So for Ameland, we started off with 4.0, I think. It was 4.0 there?
3.0.
No, we didn't start with 3.0.
4.0 and then 3.0.
Yeah. So we did 4.0 first, as some results. Then we said okay, maybe we need to do 4.0 mini because it's so expensive. That's also something which you have to forget about. Because we were struggling to make it as cheap as possible, use as less tokens as possible, and every model, how more powerful the model is, how more expensive the token is. And I think we discussed this with the client, hey, so we can do 4.0, 4.0 mini, the results will be a bit different, but 4.0 mini is way more cheaper. And then they asked us okay, what does a page cost? Well, the one with 4.0 mini is 15 cents or 8 cents or something like that, and the other one is 30 cents. And they're like, what? A full page for 30 cents? Here's my money, So you also have to look at what you're doing. because yeah, this takes a lot of tokens, but the result is also very valuable. Anyway, so then we had 4.0 mini, then we tried 0.1. Did we try 0.1?
No.
Yeah, we did, because but it didn't have function calls, so we couldn't use it. And now, now we have a prototype which kind of uses two models. So, and that sounds a bit weird maybe. So with the chat completions example I showed last, which was faster, it's running on one model right now, but Yuka made a prototype, and the first part of the whole thing we're doing is handled with 4.0, I think, yeah? So it retrieves stuff from the vector database, it has prompt, and when does it start using 0.3 mini?
Absolutely, that's all. It's so
When it starts writing.
4.0 writes a simple version of
Yeah.
it, and then 0.3 mini
Yeah.
generates the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and why are we doing that? So 4.0 is very good at that first part, and 3.0 mini is very quick and good at the other part. So it kind of, so the 0.3 mini part also improved the 4.0 part. So that's kind of cool. So in theory, what you can also do is, let's say, and it's totally not relevant to what I just showed you, but what you can do is sometimes you can have stuff generated with AI, and then have another AI model like do quality assurance on what the AI did. So, and that way you can get better results. So maybe you can start with a not so smart model to generate what you have, and then use like a reasoning model or something to think a bit more about what was generated and then improve that. So that you can also do that. So that was the OpenAI stuff, which was an option. We also thought about using a non-online hosted model and try maybe Llama, which is from Meta, which is also a bit shaped. The reason we did that was we were kind of thinking along the way of like, okay, maybe we have clients in countries who might find it not so cool if we use a model which you do not know what it does, you know, it's doing magic, but what's happening? Where's the data going? Questions like that. But if you look very closely at the terms of service of all those models, it's all really well documented what's happening, and that they're not using your data to train their model and stuff like that. So we thought about using Llama 3, but we didn't. Gemini at the time wasn't really an option because it really sucked. Gemini 1.5, there was no way that it was even getting close to 4.0. Gemini 2 is another story that's happening right now, and it's kind of, well, opinions are different about that, but I feel Gemini is really picking up the pace now. And we had Anthropic Claude Sonnet 3.5 at our disposal, and I don't know why we didn't do that. Why we didn't do that really? I didn't have the vector store.
I have another chat completions.
Yeah.
But Gauke, it's good to say that for example, Gemini, it sounds great, but the function calling is not always that great.
No, I know.
So
We'll get to the function calling later.
look at the model, you think, oh, this is great, and putting out the right content, but it has no function call, you don't have a solution.
Yeah. So these were some of the considerations we had, which you might need to consider when picking a model. And there's more probably, but it's also just experimenting. You kind of have to get to know everything, and it's not all theory. So you also need. So for example, one issue we had during testing is that. So we have like developers like Yuka, and I consider myself kind of a developer. We're like, okay, you have a whole page full of content, great. And then you have people like Kenneth and Zip, and they're like, this page is shit. What it's saying is just, it doesn't make any sense. And then we're like, oh yeah, shit, we need to actually read the content. That's very important. If you test whatever you do, don't just approve it. If it's doing something, you actually need to check what it's doing. So you actually need to do some real reading and testing. This was very important for us because this is where our tool could make a difference. So it wouldn't be like general content, it would be actual client-specific content, which a real human content writer could also write. So that would be comparable to that. Yeah, so vector database within the model was our initial requirement. So because we didn't understand vector databases, it was weird. We didn't get it. We do now, luckily. So that was what we first did. So if you want to try that out, you could use the OpenAI API, use an assistant API, then you can just clickety-click and create a vector database, which is nothing more than a list of files you can upload. But I think that would be good for people to test, to see like, okay, I'm doing a prompt now, and let's say you do it 10 times, do it 2 times, because you won't do it 10 times. So you do a prompt 2 times, you get 2 different results, and then you add some of your content which is relevant to that prompt, add it in your vector store, do the same prompt again, twice, and you will get really better results if the data you added was correct. So, okay, nice, you have that vector store, and if you use the OpenAI Assistant API, it will automatically look into the vector store. You don't have to do anything for it. It's just it sees your prompt, it kind of sees what you prompted, and maybe I do need to explain that. So, how a vector store works, how a vector store works is that it's like a regular database with an extra field. So let's say you have you have a database table with like an ID, a title, and content. And that's just, you can just read it. It's human readable. It's just like a MySQL table, ID, title, content. But there's an extra field called vector or embed. Or what you want. It's a vector. So what a vector is, it's like a mathematically. Some mathematical model is, it's actually called an embed model, is used to vectorize the content you have. So let's say I put the title and the content, I put it together, and then I vectorize it, and that gets put into the other field called the vector field. And that's actually what's being used to search for. So let's say my prompt is, write an article about paint, car paint or something. Then we'll just chop that up. It will make the prompt into a vector as well. Then the vector store will compare your vector with the vector in the vector store, and it will just calculate how close it is. And it sounds weird, but that's how it works. So it will just do calculations. Okay, this person now asked for a prompt. If I vectorize that, I have, I don't have an image of that, but it's just looking for how close the vectors are. And the closest vector is the most relevant vector. Then you know, okay, that's the result, and then you just get the page title and the page content again, the human readable part, and that's what you add to your prompt. So that's what's happening. So I have an image of that later, but that's kind of how vector stores work. So it's like a regular database where you can search in, but that's just text search, right? I mean, we all know text search. It searches for the word paint, and it looks for the word paint and anything around that. So there's a wildcard search for paint, and then it will find all the records with paint, but you don't know which one is the most relevant. So that's why the vector search is really useful, because it will calculate which is the most relevant part, and that's the content you use. So you do a prompt. First, we'll go to the vector store, calculate what vectors are the most relevant, grab that content, add it to your prompt, and then it's going to go and write content based on that. So if you could emulate a vector store by just going into the chat, do prompt, add some content to it, and then hit run, and that would be the same result. But instead of the vector store, it would go automatically. So we feel that there are 2 ways to add content to, well, actually three ways to add more context, more content, more data to a prompt. You can do it yourself by pasting it, but that's not really what we're doing. We want it to be more automatical. So you can do function calling or RAG. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Yay! So we have vector stores and Retrieval Augmented Generation. Any more fancy words we need here? They kind of do the same, but they're really different. Did I make some examples of that or not? I did. Yeah. So function calling, it kind of looks like the MCP thing I just mentioned, that that you, with a model context protocol, that you could have agentic servers doing stuff for you. That's also kind of what function calling does. So when you have your AI model, which you connect to, you can mention so-called functions. Sometimes it's called tools and function calling, but so, and what you can do is say like, okay, I want you to trigger on the word bike. No, that's a bad example. What example did it do? If something mentions an event. So if the word event is mentioned somewhere in the output, in the input, then it will call a function based on that, and it's just like a JavaScript function or a PHP function, but then that's the trigger, so you have an event, and maybe you define that you will also have a date in there. And then what you get is like you can say like, okay, now I want to look into my event database for that date, and if I find something, I pull it and I put it back into my prompt. So that's function call. So, and I have a drawing to make it more clear later. RAG is what I explained earlier. So with RAG, it has your prompt, has the context. It will vectorize that, so it's in the vector store for relevant close other vectors, gets the content, puts it in your chat, and then it will do its magic. So we're function calling, which you have to define it up front. RAG is just like, you know, function calling is like shooting with a sniper rifle, and I think RAG is more like with a shotgun, you know? And it both has its own purpose. And you can use both at the same time, that's also what we do. Yeah, your vector store. This is pretty nice, right? For an AI image. I don't see any like 3 eyes happening or anything. 2 tails, no. Anyway, so our experience is that when you use a vector store, when you use the vector store in OpenAI, our experience is that you either do well-formatted JSON, Markdown, or just plain old text files in it. Then there's no other weird stuff in there which it can get confused about. It's like how we did, or still do, SEO, you know? You optimized your website for SEO, and technically you just wanted to be there as less code as possible so that Google could actually pull content instead of other shit. That's the same with data you put into your vector store. So JSON should be really well formatted, not very complex, so if there's something there which you don't need, you can kind of know that beforehand, then you just don't add it. So let's say you have a website and you have rentable houses on it, and there's a lot of template variables with like an address and maybe some kitchen utensils which are there, a lot of stuff, maybe there's coordinates, I don't know, it can be anything. So let's say you're using an easy snippet to just export that to JSON. You need to think very well about what of that content I have, what TVs are actually relevant for what I'm doing. I guess it's not relevant if I have a TV which shows a pop-up, yes or no. That's not something which is relevant for my vector store. So you need to be really thoughtful about what am I going to put in the vector store and what not. And what I also did, and so we're talking a lot about using AI APIs right now, right? But you can still use it in combination with regular, like ChatGPT or Gemini. So what we did is we automated the JSON exports. I downloaded those and then I put them in a custom GPT. And nobody knows what a custom GPT is. So custom GPT is like you select a model and you give it some very specific instructions. So the custom GPT I made was like a JSON optimizer. So what with the instructions it got is like, okay, if you see like /n/n/n/n/n/n all like weird HTML and ASCII characters, it needed to replace that. So that's all the instructions I gave to it. I also told it to remove certain template variable keys and rename it to something more sensible. That's what I did in my custom GPT. And then I could use that custom GPT, upload my JSON file, tell it to process it according to the instructions I gave it, and then we had a really well formatted JSON file which I can then upload in my vector store. And it's still being used by the client as well. So that's also how you can work. And of course it can also be automated, but in this case we thought, well, that custom GPT was made in 10 minutes. You can also automate it in 10 days maybe, but this was easier. Yeah, so this is what we ended up with. And I'll try and explain it to you. It starts at the top left. So that's MODX with our AI content assistant. So what happens first is there's going to be a prompt, and there's like a template, the target group, and language. Yeah. That's ending up in the middleman. And the middleman is an application we made. It's just a standalone application. Every client we have goes through that same application with their own credentials. And our middleman kind of prepares the prompt and the messages. So it gets, of course, the input from the CMS. But should I show it or not? Yeah? Show. Get back to our drawing. The middleman, that's what we were. So we have our prompt. You now know that it does all these magic things in a middleman. So if we are using OpenAI, it works a bit different than how it works with regular RAG. So let's say we do regular RAG, because I think you should do regular RAG and not use OpenAI in the end. So you have the middleman. The middleman will vectorize your prompt, do a query to your vector store, retrieve it back, and then go forward to the AI model. So this is just no AI at all yet here in our middleman. We vectorize the prompt, we query the vector store with our vector, and we get content back. We put that in our message to the model as a prompt. Then the model can have function calls, which we define there, but are forwarded to this call. So we do the call with the function calls. It can do all sorts of function calls. It could be all these arrows here to external databases, external APIs, to files, whatever you want, you can do function calls with it. That is also put back to the model. If you are using OpenAI at this very moment, the vector store is queried, but forget about it. So the AI generated result is headed back to the middleman, and the middleman will put it back to MODX, and then we have the result. That's what's happening. So how's your brains doing after this? It's a lot.
So is it safe to say that RAG is basically a proactive function call?
No.
Sort of? No?
It has similarities. So this, yeah, has some overlap, of course.
Function calling is just more specific.
Yeah.
A function, you know what it will do, because you have to specify it. And RAG is just more like, okay, just grab random shit from a vector store which is relevant to make this result better.
Okay.
That's kind of what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the RAG method is more also used for creativity, like write me an article about this and this, and then he combines every...
Yeah, because we also have a lot of stuff which the model cannot know, because it's not on the internet. So we have a lot of brochures which has text in it, different text, which is never published.
Yeah.
We add it to the vector store, and then you just get better results.
Yeah, maybe it's good to say that in the APIs of, for example, OpenAI, it doesn't have a connection to internet, that's first of all. And when it has the data in, and you see the phenomenon at this moment at L1, in ChatGPT, that there's a lot of hallucination.
Yeah.
So you can't trust the data. And in this way, this is the only way. There is no way, another way to help clients when you don't have the right database.
And because that's what, so when we had the AMLO project first, and what I just mentioned to you, like, okay, the developers saw it and they felt it was good, and we then triple checked it more deeply and thought that the content was, well, kind of like, not very thoughtful or whatever. Most of that was also because there was no good data in the vector store yet. So when we improved that, we saw the results becoming better because it just had more data to use for generation. Yeah, because when we didn't have a vector store, it hallucinated a lot with the restaurants, for
Yeah,
example.
but in this case it was also
Model related.
model related.
Yeah. But this is a good example. So when we asked for restaurants in Ameland, it was shit at it without the vector store. Then we added all the restaurants from the website to the vector store, and it worked. Well, it was better.
Yeah, but when we changed
then we changed the model and it
was
worked.
100%.
Yeah.
Then how do you know where the problem is?
Yeah, you don't know. That's the big,
Most of the time it's a combination.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and at the end, maybe the biggest learning is that you have to, in our middleware we can see the tokenization, like how many tokens it does use, and when it's not, when it's delimited, and that was what we experienced in this case, it's going to do like like blah and hallucinating, whatever. He's blocking himself, so then you have to come up with another model. That was the solution here. And the biggest problem is the models are changing very fast now.
Yeah.
So they are limited the previous versions. So when you look at 4.0 in this case, I don't think you told it, but
No, I didn't.
it's limited in a total words. So when you say write me an article from 1,000 words, it does 500-600.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem, of course, because we want to create content. And that's one of the reasons we use two models.
Yeah.
The model for the function calling and grabbing the data, and the one for writing an article
With 1,000 words.
with 1,000 words. And that does work because at least.
O3 Mini can do that, 4.0 can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's weird, but
Yeah.
it's just good.
And this is my last slide, so if you have questions, please ask. And it's a lot, especially if you have never touched this. And I think one learning, which is also one experience I should share, I guess, if you're going to work with this, is that we had a lot of moments in the last months where we were like, we nailed it, guys, we're there, yeah. And then one day later we tested it and everything was completely off again. So we're like, how is this possible? And that happened a lot of times. So yeah, so don't get too how do you say that?
Yeah, comfortable.
No, demotivated.
Prepared.
Don't get too demotivated if that happens, because it will. There are solutions. But what Henning Jan says is also true. So let's say 4.0 is now in February 2025 is less powerful than when it was in November 24 because they toned it down because they want us to use the new models. Yeah. Nothing? Yeah.
It's not a question about the implementation, but my question is, what do you think the risks of building a product on Wild West tech that falls over all the time? I work in an office with a bunch of AI devs, and when ChatGPT 3 came out, they ported their entire system over to ChatGPT because people were like, why would we use you when we've got ChatGPT? And then when they had a massive kind of like sales meeting in the States, it was one day when OpenAI servers went down, and there's all these people wanting to buy this company for like 25 million or whatever, just like out the door.
Yeah.
And then, why do we do that? We should use our own server. But I mean, just from an everyday point of view,
Well,
you know, there's a
first
lot.
of all, we did explain this to our clients,
Yeah.
and we accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
But if
that's too
falls
easy.
over,
No, yeah,
That's
that's
too easy.
why.
Because at this moment we can switch models.
yeah.
And I think tomorrow we're going to try to the open source models also.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest advantage of the new era. You can switch models.
Yeah.
You're
So
not married to a model.
Yeah, the bit of my question before I digress was, are you planning to do on-prem
Yes.
models so you don't
Yeah.
have to deal with the precarity of someone making a change?
Yeah, well, what I didn't explain, I think, is that, so we have OpenAI, that's what we use, but I think, I don't know the exact number, but I guess most of all other models are OpenAI compatible. So all the endpoints are the same. So that's why it's really easy to, except for Anthropic, by the way. but that's why, for example, Gemini is OpenAI compatible. you have to watch out that sometimes, and that's what Yuka found out, is that what did Gemini lack?
Yeah, it was the combination if you use function calling and a structured output.
Yeah.
If you combine those things, that's not possible.
Yeah, so maybe you can defensively program it that it will work, but when a feature is not supported, even though it's OpenAI compatible, then it will break. But but if, let's say you have a really basic application which has no function calling or other exotic stuff, and it's OpenAI compatible, then it's really drop-in replacement. So Gemini works, Mistral works, the European French one. DeepSeek is also OpenAI compatible, so that's really
It's
cool.
almost a bit like what you need in this for sort of future for each client is an LLM that's watching all of the traffic
Yeah.
and learning what's going on, and then you can replace the remote server with that. Because
Yeah.
it will learn over time.
Yeah.
So something that
Let's think a bit, talk about it later.
No, I have a question also. You showed something you made for a customer.
Yeah.
And is it in production at the customer's place? And did he really achieve this? Was it a win for him? So
They started now, and the last email we got was that they were very happy, so that's cool. Next Monday we have the second discussion of optimizations, and that's more in terms of usability. So the system works, that's cool, and we have to build, and that's the biggest thing, we have to build a database now.
Yeah.
Because of the knowledge. That's the biggest thing now. Because the system is in place, which we saw, we put the right products into it. So there are, I think, 10,000 or 100,000 products now in the vector database and also in the by function calling. And now we have to build, right? So knowledge from the organization you can put in, e-learning programs, whatever you put in, and then you go into train the system.
But
So that's the stage.
you put it in the vector database.
Yeah.
One thing we forgot to mention is
Yeah.
the reason why we also made a middleman is that we see the possibility to create different AI applications on it. So right now, it's just, we have the vector store which is connected to the middleman, and we create like the AI content assistant for that, but we also want to make chatbots which can use the same system, because everything is set in place to make a chatbot now. Use the same middleman, it will retrieve content from the same vector store. We just need to make a chatbot now.
But a better example is content blocks. When we connect to the content block, you can do the complete system into the content block, like the persona, the tone of voice kind of thing. But also all.
Not everybody knows what we just discussed with Mark.
No, it's not correct. No, it's not correct. But it's a good example, right? Like you can connect to whatever.
Yeah, that's also why I'm interested in the rack. Like I haven't explored it enough. I was just looking, but
Okay, I have some demos I can show you. It's really straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, the things we see until in most use cases is it's within the application. So the data is already there. It's not new, but it's there. And what we do is that you add new stuff and adding stuff all the time. So it's creating, and like I said, you can create a lot of use cases there. It's not only creating pages, but come up with an use case and ID, you can connect it.
But won't that change reliability? So if you add more data, it will look more to that data instead of the specific data?
No, I think when the prompt is right, then it's smart enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can also, so in your vector store database thing, you can also divide it up into categories, collections, whatever. And let's say, let's say you have a support chatbot. It will not use the same data as a text generation system. Then you can do that. Yeah.
And it's good to say that we say, oh, use vector store, but
it's not one.
It's a little bit more difficult than that.
It's like a database with multiple tables, you know, but we don't use all the tables for all the.
Yeah, but we have an example, like you can upload a PDF, but that's not the best way to get data in, for example. Or AI is not good. You have to chunk your data into the system. Yeah, that's you need tools for that. We are created the tools into the MODX, but we didn't show it now. But we can do it maybe tomorrow, like this tool.
Chief, I have one more question. Sorry. So if do I understand it right that it can work? You need a client that can deliver a lot of information, otherwise it will not seriously work. If you made up like a shop with a lot of products, not with 20 products.
Yeah, well, so in this case, we kind of did it ourselves. We were like, yeah, give us data, please!
Yeah.
And they didn't know. And then, so the part we could do is retrieve all the data we already had, because both clients have a lot of data also from external systems synchronized to MODX. So MODX contains all the data already. But it's not in the model, because models are trained on data from the web, but it might not contain the data we want. So that's why we started, in both cases, with the data we already had, made it in more readable formats, and put it in a vector store. So that's the minimum you can do. So use the data you already have. But yeah,
you need a lot of data that it
can.
Yeah, idle page. Also like the idle page.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of data from the client.
No, but for this specific content generation, so but the idle case is different.
Yeah, and
So it depends on the case.
Yes, exactly.
But for this case, yeah, you need data.
Now, for example, in this case we have 10 or 100,000 products, whatever. But what we did, we didn't show you, we can show you tomorrow. What we did was, like, we have this product description with the specs from the product, and then we we made the prompt, and it runs automatically, and it enriches the complete page.
Yeah.
And when you have 20 products, you can do that on 20 products. When you have 10
I'm not
products,
gonna show, but yeah. So yeah, that was an issue. The product detail pages, they are made up of content from an external system, and they have like one paragraph with 3 lines of text, which is the product description. And we've been telling them for years, like, improve your product descriptions because this SEO will not perform in SEO, but there's no time for that. So then we came up with a cron job script, which loops through all the products, does a request to our middleman. It adds the product, all the product specs, and it writes some paragraphs of text for that, and voila, all the products have a good product description. Yeah. With the same middleman again. No.
But for example, if you would build a Hybel website for a small company and they don't have anything they can deliver, that the results will not be...
Well, the case for Hybel was different. So what usually happens is that we make a new website for a client. Let's say they already have a website, or if they don't have a website, they might have some content somewhere. What that system does, it looks kind of the same, but it's different. You just put the content in a prompt and tell it to fill the page. So there's a predefined template, and it will just put that content in the page, because that's what's taking the longest when we publish Hybel websites, is that when we as Hybel have to add all the content from the client into the page, it takes a lot of time. Now with the Hybel tool, which is kind of like this one, it just you add the content of a page.
But it doesn't really make up content.
No, it rewrites it a bit. Yeah, to accomplish the amount of words we want. Yeah.
No. You even have your own persona.
Yeah.
Translate, whatever.
It does 2 things. One is stick to the program. This is my text. Divide it automatically in content blocks.
Yeah.
And the second one is we have, I think, 10 personas. Like you can choose your own persona which fits you best, and then you say this persona and he rewrites. But what you have to understand is that when you use APIs, what we all do as developers, we don't use ChatGPT because that's a system, software on itself. You have to give a better prompt with your data and a persona in this case. But you can't expect that it knows everything. It knows something and it tries to, but that's why data, it's so important. For example, you have 20 products, I think. When you have 20 products and you have a little bit more information about specific, for example, is it in a specific industry? So give some information about that industry, and then it will combine automatically. But then you feed the system better. So in this case of Hybel, if we can do the not just do makeup of the page, and the other one is rewrite this in persona I. So yeah. But every use case is different. So.
Any other questions?
comment. I thought when you mentioned the client asking about the cost of each
Yeah.
request, I guess it would be relatively simple to just add that onto the panel when you generated all the content. So
Yeah.
you just got a
Yeah.
little, and then you do that
Yeah,
already. so you
but
just-
time, yeah.
So it's
yeah,
almost like
definitely.
in the back
Yeah.
end, you've got someone
Yeah.
to go in and say, oh, we generated this 100
Yeah.
pages and it's cost us like that.
Yeah, it's not too hard because all the prices are predefined. The
Yeah.
token, the price per token is
So
predefined by
you
the
just
model.
see quite
And you know the token
immediately,
usage
yeah.
per
Yeah.
credit
So
message.
someone who's just
Yeah.
logging in and say, oh, we've saved whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
100 hours.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, in closing, it's for me personally, it feels like that we as developers really need to get on this train ASAP, because if we don't, I think there will be really a difference between people who don't embrace it and people who do, because I think you'll have a really advantage. But it's a really weird world right now on AI land. So I subscribe to some newsletters, and every day I get newsletters about new stuff in AI land, and it's so overwhelming, but it's also so fun. So it's like, it's exhausting and energy boosting at the same time. I don't know, it's really weird, and but yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, and yeah, I hope we can do some cool stuff tomorrow.
I think we are, this year we are 20 years anniversary,
Yeah,
and it feels like 20 years ago.
yeah.
Like it's a new internet, it's a new era.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All the way from Russia, Vasil came here for his holidays. I think AI is one thing, but on the other hand, there are really just hands down stuff that has to be done, and running things on a server and develop stuff and all that. And we already had this topic the last time, I think. We already talked about that, but now you have a lot more experience how to work in Docker and what it could make your developing life easier.
So, no AA involved in this presentation. So everything was made by my hands. So no images also. No, nothing is generated. So we had a task. We need to make an application extra for MODX, regular application for University of Fribourg. They're applying some new faculties, new data, and they need new extra to work with this data, but it's a long process, and they have no API to work with, but they already ordered to create an extra for this not existing API, because they thought it would require a lot of time, so we need to start as fast as possible. So how to develop an extra for nothing? This is the question I tried to solve. So they gave us a bunch of JSON files and a lot of documentation, how it should work like, how it should look like, even ready HTML templates. But I need to make requests to somewhere. And then we decided to make local environment, make like a Docker project, and with these containers, Nginx web server, database, backend, install some API, working with JSON files, extra, and MODX installation inside. So, and how it's working? Docker compose its main configuration file, and I will use mouse. So there's our services, MariaDB is just database, nothing interesting. Nginx and special configuration is provided for Nginx. Also, we mount these directories. They are common. They should be mounted in both services. And this way, we have up and running local web server. I can open it like localhost and report, and see running MODX because I already installed it inside. So the problem was for me personally, it take about, I don't know, 2 hours, maybe more, to find out how to make a routing inside web server. When I ask, when I making API request, they should go to one directory. But when I work with MODX, it should work as usual. That is why we use special engineering configuration. So here is location for API, and it go into one file always, all API requests. Yeah, and here's the rule how to handle this, exactly this one file, and where it's going. You see, it go into directory with the API. And all other files, next rule, they should go to MODX directory and with dynamic name. In this way, everything works like one system, but really under the hood is two different systems because API was made with another framework, and no MODX, you know, it runs as usual. So this way we could make requests to API. This is very short example how it works. So I've made some endpoints according to documentation, like pretend that it's real API. Inside controller, I just read some files and output it. Processing, if I need limited by pages, for example, here I read the full file, but then limiting the result. So, MODX extra should be made with Git packet management. That was a requirement from University of Fribourg because they have other extras, they have their own workflow, and they want to everything to be similar. So it's regular MODX extra, nothing new. You just make requests. You call snippet on a page. It makes request to API, show list of some items from this API and generate not existing links to these items. When you click on this link, you get an error 44. Like page not found, and then regular plugin just catch this request, make other request to API, and output real page with this not existing link. So in the end, very short, we don't need real API to start to work. We can use our own Tumi API. And this, we can store whole the project with all configs in Git. We can share it with client. Client can download it, run Docker on his own computer with this Tumi API and check how everything is working. We don't need even to publish it somewhere for now. I mean, like online. So it's totally local project, and everyone can use it, run it. It's very convenient. And I like how it's going. if you want some more details, I can show source code, but I don't know if it's interesting to someone or not. But that's all, folks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think what we experienced also with this kind of Docker setup is to work together with the client of University of Fribourg. It makes our life much easier because they have kind of a dump of their actual MODX system, and they send it out. Then you have to install it locally and have set up everything that it's running. And so with this way we found it's easy just to you just fire up the Docker image, and then because it's all in Git, then you have the latest. You are on the latest with the development that was made. So this is really handy.
Yeah, and then of course in the end, when they launched their real API, we tested it, fixed some stuff, and yes, it's just working. So we didn't lose any time for waiting for real APIs. Yeah, thank you.
And you can reuse this for any
Yeah,
other
sure.
client
This
who has
process,
this issue, right?
Yeah, we can just replace extra.
Yeah.
We develop new extra totally in the same containers.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Olá pessoal, tudo bem? Meu nome é Roca, eu vivo aqui no Brasil. É um prazer estar participando com vocês aí do 6º MODX e Snowup. Obrigado, Henks, pelo convite e a toda a equipe. Eu vou falar sobre como automatizar e escalar conteúdo para redes sociais utilizando MODX e inteligência artificial. Vai ser uma conversa muito legal. Bom, então vamos lá. Eu coloquei um cenário aqui para apresentar para vocês qual o desafio para escalar conteúdo no social media. Vamos supor que a gente tem como cliente uma agência de notícias digital e ela tem uma demanda de 20 postagens diárias para poder fazer isso distribuir isso nas redes sociais. Então já é um fluxo razoavelmente interessante. E precisa ter uma equipe grande para poder fazer isso. Então eu vou ter que ter um redator-chefe, precisa ter um copy, precisa ter uma pessoa de marketing e preciso ter uma pessoa de design. Porque o algoritmo pede isso, né? Eu preciso movimentar os meus canais sociais para posicionar a minha marca. Então, qual o custo operacional que isso vai gerar, qual o impacto que isso vai gerar com toda essa equipe fazendo esse trabalho. Aí a seguir eu vou mostrar como a gente pode fazer esse cenário da mesma forma, mas com menos pessoas e com a mesma qualidade. Bem, agora a conversa começa a ficar mais interessante. Então, como automatizar e escalar esse conteúdo via API com MODX? Então, são 3 cenários aqui que a gente precisa pensar. Criar um endpoint dentro do MODX, embarcar uma inteligência artificial, aí uma plataforma da sua escolha. Atualmente a gente usa aqui o Azure OpenAI para poder fazer isso. Então a gente vai preparar alguns prompts para poder escrever alguns conteúdos automáticos para poder fazer o processo e usar uma plataforma de terceiro para a gente poder fazer a automação. Mas o que eu falei inicialmente sobre o cenário da agência, aqui a gente vai minimizar um designer, um copy e uma pessoa de marketing. Então a gente já absorveu 3 pessoas. A gente só não vai absorver aqui o redator, porque o conteúdo que a gente vai fazer é autoral. Não vai pedir para a inteligência fazer um conteúdo. Bom, o próximo passo é criar um cenário aqui dentro do MODX, criar um recurso, um post, com título, conteúdo e uma template variável de uma imagem. Basicamente o que a gente precisa. Agora é uma parte bacana aqui, que eu gosto de fazer isso. Lembra que eu tinha falado para vocês também que a gente não ia precisar mais de designer, né? Então aqui entra o trabalho de designer. Então, eu vou usar aqui o render form, mas vocês podem usar outros no mercado, aí tem o Placid também, de fazer o criativo. Então, o que iria levar alguns minutos ou horas para o designer fazer um criativo, a gente vai poder fazer isso automático só trabalhando com dados variáveis. Então, dentro do render form, eu já criei um template lá, e eu vou substituir as variáveis que eu fiz no MODX dentro do template chamar a API e ele devolver essa imagem para mim. Então eu vou usar título, que é o título do evento, e a URL da imagem que foi os alvos que eu coloquei. Mandei gerar e o response ele mostrou essa imagem aqui. Já está no tamanho de um feed de uma rede social. Coloquei aqui o título, coloquei umas bordas arredondadas, isso é quando eu fiz o template. Coloquei o nome do MODX ali embaixo, só com uma graça. E está pronto o nosso criativo. Levou menos de 5 segundos para criar um criativo. Dentro desse cenário, você pode ter vários templates e você pode fazer randomizar esses templates. Ah, mas a timeline ali da rede social está muito parecida. Então você pode fazer 10 layouts, 20 layouts diferentes e randomizar conforme as categorias, conforme a cor. Bom, enfim, aí dá para fazer várias composições legais para ficar algo bem dinâmico mesmo. Então, agora que a gente já tem o criativo pronto e ele já preencheu uma linha aqui do nosso JSON, baseado no endpoint, a gente vai precisar fazer mais duas chamadas aqui para a inteligência artificial para compor essa API. Então vai ser o caption e a hashtag. Então eu ia precisar de um editor aqui, de um redator para poder fazer o resumo desse conteúdo e procurar hashtag em alguma outra plataforma, hashtag top trend, para poder fazer esse trabalho. Então eu pedi para a inteligência artificial, ela resuma ou cria um prompt e fala assim, resuma o conteúdo do evento do Snowup. Ela fez o resumo aqui. Eu sempre costumo usar de 50 a 70 tokens para as redes sociais. E quando é hashtags, eu procuro pedir para a inteligência artificial hashtags top trend para ter um alcance melhor. Então, volto desde o início lá do nosso cenário lá da agência de notícias digital. A gente já não precisa de um redator aqui para poder escrever esses dois conteúdos aqui. Então, o CTI aqui já está prontinho, que já veio do MODX. Então, o nosso JSON está 100%. Agora só falta publicar. Então, agora nós vamos fazer a distribuição do conteúdo. E para isso, nós vamos usar o make. Ou você pode usar o Zapier, e a gente também usa o buffer, para poder entregar para as redes sociais. No make, a gente vai fazer uma chamada aqui, HTTP, via API, com aquela API que a gente já deixou pronta. E o buffer, a gente já deixou parametrizado também, e ele vai distribuir no Facebook, no Instagram e no LinkedIn. A gente pretende, no futuro, fazer com que isso aconteça tudo dentro do MODX. Até para a gente ter certeza que vai ocorrer tudo certo e a gente consegue monitorar. Mas isso ainda é um projeto, então vai muitas linhas de código para poder fazer isso direto, desde a criação do criativo até a distribuição do conteúdo. E a seguir eu vou mostrar para vocês em tempo real a distribuição do conteúdo nessas redes sociais. Bom, agora vamos distribuir o conteúdo. Estou aqui no cenário do make.com e deixa eu só explicar para vocês um pouquinho. Aqui eu estou fazendo a chamada HTTP pelo endpoint do MODX.
There's a MODX URL in there.
Com as parametrizações feitas. E no buffer eu estou...
So it retrieves the JSON data from the MODX API in the first step, and now it parses it through the buffer, which then
conteúdo e
publishes
aqui
it.
embaixo colocando a imagem com dados variáveis, isso pegando do JSON que veio do endpoint. Bom, então vamos rodar. Demora uns segundos ali para fazer a publicação. Isso automatiza muito o processo de quem precisa fazer postagens assim, automatizadas em tempo real e em quantidade. Isso, as empresas, as agências de notícias e até agências de marketing mesmo, precisam dessa habilidade para poder tirar o trabalho de pessoas fazendo isso manualmente, né? Então, a gente automatiza todo esse trabalho para poder fazer. Vamos ver aqui se caiu na rede social, deu um errinho aqui, mas... Vamos lá, vou entrar aqui na minha rede social, no Facebook. Vou ver se entrou aqui a postagem. Entrou. Postagem aqui, falando do evento. CTI, as hashtags e a imagem. Vamos para o Instagram. Instagram também chegou. Aqui, arte. Então é o mesmo conteúdo para 3 redes. Você pode diferenciar cada conteúdo para cada rede? Pode. É só ter endpoints diferentes. Não tem problema nenhum. Vamos para o LinkedIn. Ok, está aqui. Ok, está aqui também. Ok. Working fine. Trabalho finalizado. Bom, pessoal, espero que tenha contribuído aí para o evento. Novamente, obrigado, Renks, pela oportunidade. Na verdade, eu gostaria de estar aí. Eu gosto de frio, eu gosto de neve. No Brasil aqui a gente nem sabe o que é neve, que é muito quente, muito tropical. Mas em algum momento a gente pode até projetar alguma coisa aqui no Brasil e a gente pode falar de novas tecnologias. Mas o cenário que a gente viu aqui, de como escalar conteúdo com MODX e inteligência artificial, abre um precedente para a gente entender o quanto a gente pode customizar tempo e dinheiro realizando processos automatizados. E a inteligência artificial está aí para isso, para poder fazer todo esse processo para nós, né? Ainda mais a gente que trabalha com tecnologia, já vive esse ambiente, então isso vai ser revolucionário, na verdade. Então tem muita coisa boa ainda para vir. Futuramente a gente pretende fazer não só criativos, fazer vídeos também. A ideia é trazer tudo para o MODX, não precisar de software de terceiro. Então a gente espera que vai ser uma grande evolução. Como bônus, eu conversei com o pessoal da Render, que é a plataforma que eu fiz os criativos, e eles concederam 25% na primeira compra, se vocês estiverem interessados em testar a API para poder fazer os criativos. Então você pode usar esse código que está aqui embaixo e poder testar a plataforma. Gente, é isso. Desejo um ótimo restante de evento para vocês aí, que vocês possam aproveitar e talvez em breve a gente volte a se falar também. See you guys. Bye bye.
So, yeah, we can't ask questions, but we already did for you. So, I had 2 questions. What was his name?
Roga.
Roga, yeah. So, what I found confusing in the example was that I had the feeling we only saw a part of the implementation. Because we saw that it would call a MODX API to get retrieve the content, put that into the random form thing to get image and things together. Then it was set to Buffer, and Buffer is a social media publishing platform where you can just have one input and publish it to multiple platforms. We saw that. So I was like, what is actually triggering this process? Because you don't want to have the same article published all the time. So he said, like in make.com, which could also be Zapier, HTTP calls are triggered for each new record, so which it identifies itself. So if a new record is made in MODX, then it triggers that process. He also says that in Zapier it's necessary to have a unique ID in the JSON for it to process, but in both cases it listens for when a new post is made and then it has been created. So there is a full automated process. And I also asked him like, what AI models did you use? Where did you use AI? The data sources are of course fetched from MODX. So the title, the artwork, and the content, plus what the user wants, and the rest is all written by AI. He doesn't mention what AI model.
Yeah, actually use Azure, OpenAI.
Yeah. Oh, that was in the presentation. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Were you paying attention?
Yeah, I was. I saw it multiple times. And so that's it. Yeah, but it's, yeah, I mean,
Nice.
so I like it. Yeah,
That's cool.
And I already told Roca it will not be a big issue that when you organize a MODX event in Brazil that there will not be snow.
No.
We can do it.
Yeah.
So?
Where in Brazil is
You
it?
can take it in a container.
I'm not sure. It was not
It
was
looks
not
warm.
Rio, but
It looks warm.
That's his house.
so?
On to the next one.
We can have more questions, but I'm not
You
sure.
have to answer now.
And nobody checks what actually is being posted. Right.
Sorry?
Nobody checks what is actually being posted on the social platforms.
That someone checked on Instagram.
Oh, yeah, he can do it in
his
buffer.
account.
Yeah, you can do it in buffer. So you can automatically publish it, but you can also have reviews in buffer.
Yeah, but you mean the post that he created or
Yeah.
they're still
Oh.
online?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I was checking what the presentation ended, so I wasn't able to check if it was.
Yeah, this is actually a translation AI implementation. So to help translate pages to multiple contexts.
And it was already in the forums, I guess. Daniel posted 1 or 2 items.
On the forums, yeah, in the community, yeah.
Hello everyone, Daniel from the line here, and I would like to show you something that we've been working on to help translate resources in MODX using AI. It's called Localize, and this is how it works. Here we have a pretty fresh installation of MODX, and we've created 4 different contexts, one for each of our languages. Like if you have English, Deutsch, Espanol, and Svenska. I've created a home resource in English, and very simple page, nothing very special about it, completely normal page, except that we've created some template variables already. As you can see, there are 4 switches: localize, DES, SVN, these are for the 4 different contexts, the languages, and this is to say that we actually are ready to translate this into a particular language, and these are just normal text template variables that hold the ID of the corresponding resource in the other contexts. Let me just show you how it works. So let's say I want to translate this thing into pretty much all the other languages. I just set my switches to yes, and I click save. Now what it's doing now, it's taking a little bit longer than normal. That's because it's translating this page into the other context. And if we want to refresh the context, hey presto, we have everything translated automatically into the language that we want. Obviously they're not published yet. That would be something that the user would do once they've checked that the translation is the one that they want. We can also do it with subpages. So if I create a little subpage here, about us.
Yeah, so it's all the answers.
Great. And we save it. Obviously nothing's happened yet, primarily because we haven't published this. And also because we haven't set any of these. So you can actually carry on working on your pages without having them translate for as long as you like. But if I'm ready to translate it, I again just set all of my switches and I click save. And what's now happened, if I refresh all of my context, is that all of my initial home pages have become containers, and the plugin has not only translated the content, it also put it in the correct structure in the file tree. So there you go. But how does it work? Let's have a little look. It relies on a plugin and it uses the OpenAI API for the translations. If we look at our elements, we can see the various template variables that we've already had a look at. If we go a little bit more into depth, you can see that there's actually nothing very complicated about this. We've created one for the checkbox, the switch that we saw before. This will localize and then the language. And then we have a text box which holds the ID. This is the same for all the languages. You have to create both for each language, which is slightly cumbersome, but it's a one-off thing. What we've also set up in our system settings is we set up a system setting with the OpenAI API, which we just store there, and we use it in our plugin script. Plugin to localize and it looks like this. Before we start looking at the code, it's important to note that the event that it runs on is on doc form save. We just make sure that we enable that, and it makes sense because we obviously want this plugin to run whenever we have to save a page in the manager or we save or update a resource, because that's when we wanted to check if the switches are set and if it should run the whole translation flow. Very simply here, just going to go through the code. It's actually not that complicated. So the first thing we do is just kind of load our configurations. Essentially, we tell it where the OpenAI API key is in the system settings that I just showed you. We tell it which contexts there are, and we tell it more or less what it should translate. Again, these are completely up to you. If you don't want to translate everything, or if you just want to translate the content and the page title, that's totally up to you. And then it essentially starts translating. So the first thing that we tell it is the names of the various template variables that you've set up, because it doesn't know these automatically. You just have to match the names that you've given it in the template variables themselves, because that's what it's going to check for and that's what it's going to write to when it actually runs. And then it just grabs all the content that you've told it to get in the previous step and say, okay, this is what I'm going to translate. And then it actually starts the process of creating the various resources in the correct structure, sending the content of those resources to the API, and getting the correct response for each context. So what it checks for is if the switch is set to yes, then we carry on. If not, then we stop. And what it then does is here in 3.1 is to check if it's a child document, and then to determine the parent document ID. So this is a little bit tricky. This is the step that builds the functionality that I showed you before with the subpages. And obviously, if the parent is already translated, an ID will already be set in the ID template variable. And that's how it knows exactly where to put it in the target context that it's going to. The final stage is to actually create the resource in a new context, in its new folder structure under the correct parent, and then to populate that with the correct translated data into the fields where it should go. It's part here. Once we've done that, it automatically saves it, Very simple, so we have use or save, and then the final step is to copy over all of the original template variable values from the original document to the new one. Now this was a step that we initially missed out on, but we found that there's a lot of template variables that aren't translated or shouldn't be translated, but you still need them. You don't want to be creating new pages that completely miss out on those template variables. So by default, the plugin will automatically port over all of your template variables and their values into each of the translated resources. The final step is to overwrite the ID in the original English one, if that's your source, so that the ID is set in that template variable as well. So we have a nice complete set of IDs, of corresponding IDs for each version of each page. The final thing here is obviously the translation function itself. So this function whereby we send the whole thing to the OpenAI API, and we get a response that we can then handle, as we showed you previously in Project. Very standard. It just sends it to this URL, that's the endpoint, and it gets it back. Obviously, we're logging everything if it doesn't work in the MODX error manager as well, so we can debug pretty easily. But if we go to the error manager right now, I'm pretty sure there's nothing there. So, all looking good. I hope this plugin is of use. It's still very much a work in progress, but it's been pretty helpful for us to get things translated pretty quickly and easily, and without having to fuss around with anything that's too big or too complicated in terms of localization infrastructure. Anyway, if you liked it, let me know. Any suggestions for improvements, we're very happy to hear them. Have a great time, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Not a presentation and not even a talk, but it's more a question in a philosophical way. We had a lot very technical things that we have been explained, how it works, how it could be implemented into MODX, but my question is more, what could be the future of web development in an AI-driven world? But like Roka said, we try to optimize stuff, and probably we optimize ourselves too, and it can be that we became irrelevant, or more the question is, what if websites are becoming irrelevant? All the things that we heard today was that we can optimize the production of information that then will be stored into the CMS most of us are working with, into MODX, and then on the other side there is a graphic designer who built a wonderful pattern and themes and stuff, and then this information that is entered will go out, and it's a website that people. So what is the end user doing? We want to provide information for them by the websites. Normally they go, if they are looking for information, they're going to a search engine, they find a list of websites, they have to click on it, they go to the website, and then they have to find the information on the website. So what we did, so we are developers or designers who build sites, but I think this model is going to crumble. What website is, what websites are. Because I think it's going to change that we need websites at all to access information. when we are looking for information. For example, I remember when I was chatting with Mark, if he's coming and showing up here at the Snowup, and then he told me, yeah, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to make me a proposal for the best travel options I have. Before, I think what we did is, okay, I'll check the website of the railway, or I check Skyscanner for giving me a flight, and so, but it's not necessary anymore. So I think that the traditional web model, that it's not about building websites or designing websites, designing interfaces, and the content creators, as we saw, this is already in process to optimize that stuff, and I think we just don't need the front end anymore. So as already said, we will find our information centralized. Why should I go to a search engine and filter all the data out that are relevant for me, when I just can ask a question and I get hopefully the right answer. So I think that what will happen, that content has to be, and information has to be produced, and it has to be stored somewhere. The question is, where has it to be stored? Locally, on a web server, or in a database? And why not just giving access to AI models that I'm asking later as an end user to provide me this information? Yeah, so that's why a traditional website may become obsolete, because the next years it will still improve AI and the interfaces to it, and it gets faster and more consumer friendly also. So is there any hope for us? I think no. No, there is. But this is the question I want to ask you also. How do you look at it? That we see, hey, we can do really great and fantastic stuff with AI, but on the other hand, we pay a price for that. And the price could be that our work as we do it now won't be the same, and that we have to look for another job, or we have to learn new skills. Just so the question is also, do you think that in a few years, are there any websites anymore, or is there just an interface where you can ask questions and get the answer back, and also structured information back that answers the question, that you don't have to have these extra steps to look for this information? So new opportunities, and that we need to find ways not to lose our work. I think this is exactly what you are doing at Sterk now. I think you did something else not a long time ago, and now you are going into to produce, as it said, machine-readable content. So the role of the traditional websites for now, it's they can, and this I take party for the traditional websites. Now, it's also that they provide a clear source of authority, and we can hopefully be sure that this information we get there is accurate. And probably it is not an extinction of websites, but probably it's a coexistence. And the question will be, why shouldn't they disappear? Probably because they are relevant, still relevant. And the more important point, I think, is the experience that we have richer interactions and brand explorations. That you can emotionally interact with a customer, and that is what AI, at least for now, is not capable to do. So, again, what to do? We have to change, because we just won't build traditional websites anymore, and we have to learn new skills to navigate there. But as I said, thank you very much, and probably you imagined that it's AI that helped me doing that stuff. That's also explained why the design was so crappy. And the images, but this one is a good one. This is Reto made it for me. He has quite good skills with Midjourney. Yeah. So my question to you, thank you for your time. It's, what is your opinion? Do we still need websites as we know it for now? And with that, do we still MODX or other CMSs as we know it for now in the next few years? What do you think?
I think it will stay on a different way, I think, but the brands still have their fans, and fans want to communicate with their idols, so the emotional connection will be.
And with do you think it's on website, or is it more through social media platforms like this?
Both, I think.
And trust, of course.
Yes.
And trust.
Yeah. Like if you ask ChatGPT, give me 5 products that I can buy, it will give you 5 products. But do you trust the products? You know, if you have a website in front of you, you can look that website up, all that stuff.
But you have to find them on your own. These 5 products. You have to make a decision also which one you want to compare.
Yeah,
so
but that's why, like, you could ask ChatGPT for the 5 websites that sell the product, for example. So it's a combination. It's like working together.
Yeah.
I kind of feel that kind of thing will be increasingly homogenized into the main silos that most content runs through already. So, you know, corporate web, basically, and so you will end up with, if you go to those websites, they'll all be generated by whichever service anyway, so major websites. And there's a kind of indie web organization that's sort of looking at, you know, there's still space for kind of handcrafted, handmade content specific websites, but I suspect that will be an increasingly small and unvisited kind of area of the web, because most people are in social media, and if you can pull that content in, as you see on Google now, you know, you're getting AI summaries first before the results. And most people don't even go past the fold to look at the results, and that's stuff that's there, and there's a link, you can hit that. So, you know, you might not be.
So it's like a movement to retro. So retro stuff like
you can see that those retro sites appearing over the last 5 years anyway. It would be like sites, but there might be a specifically kind of counter-cultural kind of web, indie web starting. I don't know.
But we'll always stay a niche. So
it would be like, the web would be like, you know, 1990.
or something.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Well, the question is also where is ChatGPT or other programs will have the information from. If I build, for example, a new company with a brand new product that doesn't exist so until now, from somewhere those systems need the information. Maybe it's not websites, we don't know, but somewhere new information has to be generated.
This is actually what you do, as I understood it. You do the databases with this vector stuff that you feed. You feed in extra information wherever it is. But on the other hand, I think it's also as you set up a website now and you ask Google to index it, that it can access the information. You can also ask any model to ask to index it.
I think you're totally right. Like it's the combination the first years now, and also for different kinds of target groups. So it will be a combination, and it's you have to in some way deliver the content of data. I have to say not content, but data, maybe from vector stores or a tool or whatever. But I think it's going to step further because we are going to I think this year to agents. I don't know if you already saw some examples of agents, but then you have a real person in terms of AI who is sitting behind that data set, so it's AI who's talking to the other AI. So for example, I get my personalized clone who knows me, knows everything about me, and when I have to go travel to the Snowup, I just say I want to travel to the Snowup, and he will, based on my personal, how do you say it? Preferences. He will search into those data thingies, and the train station, for example, has an AI clone also, which is called Peter, and Peter is going to help my agent to set up the complete travel, the trip.
Buy the tickets and etc.
Yeah, because I have idea with that kind of stuff. I don't have to do anything anymore.
So in that, you could make an analogy that you're going from, it's a bit like going from a fireplace with a fire in it that you make to electricity or gas in your heating system, you know? You're producing heat by some means, but it becomes increasingly abstracted from you. So, you know,
that's good.
So you're going from websites to web services, and there's a lot of stuff recently about AI. You know, the future, the internet is dead because there's a bunch of APIs that are consumed by processes, which is you know, given the it's interesting that this is an acceleration of the automation which was supposed to end everyone's jobs in 25 years, 10 years ago, but it looks like it might kind of get there by then. It was a bit slow down. But that abstraction might be, I think as a web developer / designer, he's been doing it for 92. I think I built my first web page. It's it's a bit like, do I want to design APIs? I do design APIs, but do I want to do that day in, day out? Or maybe there's something else to do that might be a bit more like, I don't know, Royal still made a fire outside last night, but it was warm in here.
So we keep the fire. Even we have central heating. And the remark to you is then when you have this agent, and the next step then will be that you won't come to the Snowup, but you send your agent.
I think the other way around, because we have more time to talk to each other.
You let him work.
That's the disadvantage, because we have to build that stuff together. So don't know if we have more time. But
hopefully we will work for tokens in the future.
And the stupid thing is that we try to imagine the future by thinking of how it's now. But I think I always said there are two quotes about the future. The first one is like, if you want to know the future, you have to take a look to the past. And if you take a look to the past, then you could say like, okay, in the past we had phone books. Yes, most of us went for phone books, and you could say like, when the first web pages came, that will kill the phone book, right? But I think that didn't kill the phone book. It was something else that killed the phone book. It was the mobile phone. Because we didn't need to think about phone numbers, because they're already in our phones, like hundreds or maybe thousands of them. So then back to the other quote about the future is like, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Just hop on the train and create it, because we can't try to think about like how it will be in the future, but it's only from our perspective now. We can have all those agents and stuff, and we have a lot of time, but probably we don't have time because we're doing something totally different than we do now, and we can't even imagine what we do then. So we will not have more time. That no.
Okay, this is a pessimistic.
No, it's more like the best way to predict the future is just to create it. Just hop on the train and
so if you can't predict it, then
no, just like
then
I mentioned to our team during an internal presentation about AI and that type of thing. Just hop on the train. It of course you can be pessimistic. Well, we don't have work anymore. No, it's just like, just hop on a train and create a future and even imagine that, even it's this tiny part, but we can create that future. We are in a business that we can have this big advantage that we can create a future. That isn't pessimistic at all. For me, it isn't pessimistic. It's more like, okay, it's.
I mean, pessimistic and there's not more free time.
Okay, yeah. Well,
you can choose.
Well, we're working now, right?
Yeah.
And then again, like you mentioned before, yeah, you mentioned like 20 years, or was it well, one of you?
Yeah.
That feels like 20 years.
Yeah.
That feels like it. The world didn't change anything like since '92. There are a few things like mobile, social media, but this is really a big change.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun again.
That's possible.
Yeah.
When if you've got a lot of some huge percentage of the web is going to be generated, content generated by AI and overseen by somebody and tweaked by someone, then what's the tipping point where all the AI is consuming kind of previously AI content?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, with your system that you showed, are you adding the new pages into the vector store? Are you adding the generated pages into the vector store? So eventually, there's going to be,
it's a crazy creation.
you're going to be at a shrinking proportion of human-generated content.
Yeah,
I don't know if it necessarily matters.
No, but I think that's too, how do you say it? Too short, or I don't know the right word, but I think people and AI go to work together. We don't going to disappear. How does AI, for this moment, I know robots and stuff, but let's just discuss that one, but going to do that job, the painting, for example. So you have learning, you have to put learning somewhere into. Not in an Excel or Word document, but in a real smart system which help people really to onboard, to paint themselves. So it's a positive way of thinking, because I think AI and the human have to cooperate. There's no other way. Maybe in 10 years
unless
we don't know.
the AI thinks.
Yeah, exactly. But
I don't need humans.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know what.
That's not a scenario, of course.
Exactly.
But I don't think this is and it's not the only question. It's the question is also you had, as I understood it, that AI starts to eating its own shit. But
that's not shit. Why is it shit?
It's own gold.
Then why is it shit?
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest how do you say, mistake is to say misconception is like ChatGPT. Oh, it doesn't work. But you have to train it. You have to tell them. It's a colleague which you have to train and tell who you are. You have to deliver data, real good data, and then it's producing. I hope it's producing the best content.
Yeah.
So that's. I think he consumes great content.
Yeah.
So
If you have a painting and it isn't really realistic,
Yeah.
it's quite abstract. Is it not good? Is it shit? Because naming something shit, then it's more from a perspective, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I think if you create as you use AI to create something new,
Yeah.
and that's
yeah,
that's
but,
what,
yeah.
No, what I
Maybe
meant
to
also
help you, there is a lot of shit creating right now. That's obvious.
Also
But
by
that's-
humans.
Yeah, okay.
That's
But
also
also,
true.
yeah, but also yeah. So to back you up, you're totally right. But that's why I'm so fanatic. Like we have to create the best.
Yeah.
With AI.
So
That-
what I
that's
mean
key.
also is that AI produces information based on the information we gave it,
Yeah.
and then it outputs, and then but as more AI generated output there is, it's gonna be also the input of it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what happens with this loop?
Well, when you start with shit, you get shit. That's totally true. And becoming a bigger house of shit because it was shit. No, not really. Because you have to start with a good database.
You amplify the
Yeah. And so when you start with better content based on AI, which is the case, then you get greater content and greater content.
But the question then is, do you go back into your vector database and delete all content that might have been shit?
Maybe train.
Well, I think we are now stuck in a discussion of tools. And we lose from our view what these tools are used for. I mean, when we got first laser printers, everybody was saying that the printing industry is going to die because everybody would be able to laser print anything that he wants. When the internet was started to grow in popularity, other industries were destined, let's say, to die, to disappear. But some did, and some didn't. Some grow even bigger. So if you look at the things, we should be focusing on what these tools are used for. So the website is used for people to find the information they need, to find the thing they need to achieve the goal. Like, I don't know, I was using website like a couple of days ago to buy a ticket for a bus, for a train, for this stuff. And the way we travel changed radically in the last 20 years. We just talked about that yesterday. But we still travel. We still need these things. Like Hank mentioned, we use the paper phone books, and now we still use phone books, but it's in the phone. I don't have to remember numbers of my friends, or you know, I have it in my hand anytime I need it. So I think that in this way we need to discuss and think about the AI as a tool that will radically change the things how we do stuff. But we'll still have the same things. People would need to find information about the products they want to buy and to make a decision what they want to buy, from where they want to buy, how they want to travel. That will all change in technical detail how this is going to be implemented, but the need will still be there. And our task must be to look in that and find how we can accomplish this, how we can offer new services, new stuff, new ways to achieve the same thing that will still remain. So probably the idea about website is going to be different. It will expand. It will be I would say, even more complex. Like 20 years ago, you build a website, you put in a notepad, you put some HTML tags, and you put some content, and you publish it. But today, you have to think about optimization, SEO, about all the stuff, and then also to add meta tags for social media to properly discover your website. So, and now we have even more, like with the AI, we also need to collect this information from somewhere.
You have to AI optimize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. So, I think there's the challenge is to understand what are new options in front of us, and then to find how to navigate. And I would not call it calm sea.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say, we have to remember that there is not only one solution for something. There is not only one information which is the information. There are lots of things when depending on the source, the database you consult, you will have different informations. And what is important for me is to have different information for same subject and then have the choice as a human. This is not possible for an IA to do it. You have to have the choice. Will I take for example, the example you give, your assistant will know what kind of thing you will take the train or take the train or go by foot or whatever. But this is on a moment. You will have different solutions to go somewhere, depending on your mind as a human and not as a... So I think we have a lot of things to do with websites still, and remember that what is important is to give the humans a choice of what they will take on the moment. Not have a unique solution.
I asked O1 ChatGPT with deep research what he thought of the topic. And the highlights are AI and automation enhanced development. AI, machine learning and automation tools will accelerate web development. I think that's true. It will help us. So a lot of routine jobs could be handled by AI.
Unfortunately, not filling the dishwasher and...
No. And no-code and low-code platforms will make it easier for non-programmers to create basic websites and prototypes. It's true, and I will explain that later. But traditional coding remains crucial. Despite the growth of no-code, core programming skills will remain highly relevant. Complex and high-performance web applications will continue to require traditional coding and software engineering. We'll see about that. And then what I also like is websites will still matter, although they will evolve. According to O1, businesses and individuals will absolutely still need websites as a key part of their online presence. And I think that's true, because you can't have your brand exposed online if it's just coming from an AI chatbot thingy. And
not yet, at least.
No, not yet. At this moment not. But we're looking at the near future, so we don't know, of course. A positive job outlook for web developers is that web developers will remain a viable and in-demand career over the next decade. Job growth for web developers is projected to be above average, steady demand.
Well.
So that looks good. But one important thing is continuous learning, and I think that's the last part. Continuous learning is key. So, and that's the train we mentioned. We need to hop on that train, because if we don't, we will not remain relevant. So, and a nice example of that is with AI assistance in this whole thing is that we talked about Hugging Face today, and Hugging Face is like a deployment tool for AI models, and we were wondering how that would work. So I just asked my Visual Studio Code using Claude 3.7 Sonnet to create a web application, to implement a PHP web application to connect to Hugging Face and use the Mistral, the French AI model, to generate, to make proof of concept of that. He made it and cost $2. Took your whole talk to generate it.
That's long, man.
Yeah, it was continually coding here. I had to do 3 iterations to make it actually work, and now I have a web application using Mistral, which also has its own server with an that's a video. So it's just a web application where you can put your input into and set the temperature, and it also answered the same question you just asked, but then using Mistral, and it's a worse answer than O1 gave me. So, but still, it's nice that the question we had today, which was one of the goals for this weekend, to find out how Hugging Face works and how Mistral works, that AI can help you solve that. But this is not something we can use in an end product, but it's a nice proof of concept which AI helps us understand. And otherwise, we'll probably be hacking the whole weekend and still have no results. So that's nice. But I think that's for the short term. Of course, we don't know what the long term will bring us. So that's the scary thing. Yeah.
Is it a scary thing?
I don't know. You can think it's scary. You can also see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, it's more like, what if you?
It's just
would
uncertainty.
know, what if
Yeah.
you would know, like, this is
Yeah.
the future. This
Yeah.
this is what I do in 10 years or 20 years. Then so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Julian, you have?
Given the inexorable speed of automation, what are people using for a CLI for MODX to integrate MODX into these pipelines, if anything?
Yield, I think.
So what is it?
What command line are you using a CLI for MODX?
We don't
Three.
we do CLI and all that stuff.
Unify, but depends on what you're trying to do.
Also for
Well, I
installation.
just mean if you've got a pipeline of processes, you might want MODX to be part of the pipeline of automated processes. So,
It's not CLI.
No, but it's automated stuff.
well, I was sort of flicking through the various previous offerings, MODX Shell and other things like that, and I think one of the really important things for MODX 3, and this might be something I could mess around with tomorrow, is to see if we can get one of the LLMs to generate code for a CLI for MODX 3.
I'm sure it could,
And then and then test that, because at that point, then some of the things that we've been looking at today involving the manager and things don't need to be part of the. So that's one thing. It's like MODX as an interface. If websites aren't going to need an interface in the future, should content management frameworks need an interface as well? So
Thank you for that idea. Probably we can look at that by tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
You have something to say? Yes.
So, we talked about AI Kit. I'm wondering if I should do like a quick demo today so we can just talk about it tonight and work on it tomorrow. Because I feel like there's been a lot of discussion and we have some people here today that we already showed and we discussed some things. And maybe to bring everyone up to speed, I could just quickly show it before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Unless people are already falling asleep.
We want just there's coffee machine behind.
I'll keep it short just to show like what we're.
How many minutes? How many minutes?
Alright, so what I'm going to show you is something that's called AI Kit. It's something I started working on quite recently. And the goal I have for this is to make a baseline toolkit available that anyone can use to use AI in Manager. We saw a lot of really cool things and lots of people are doing lots of really cool stuff. But it's all like isolated little integrations and what I want to try and do is build something that's extendable and you know that we can all build on together and ride the train together to use that metaphor.
Okay.
So one thing like if you feed it shit you get shit. That's what we discussed earlier. So mine is meant to try and get the right stuff in there. So I asked it to check the weather in our locations and now I'm going to tell it to check the about me page. for our offices. This is going to use function calling in OpenAPI to find resource. So it's going to find the resource, going to load the resource, and then it found our office locations. Yes, please check the order, because that was the whole idea of this demo. So now features the location, it's going to call another function and give us all the information we need. The idea here is that because we use function calling, we can tell it to look up specific things in this website. Use cases could include looking up orders in commerce, it could include looking up form submissions, it could include looking up products in a custom database. You know, anything that sort of like needs some extra information, it can get there. Now another example of something I just worked on a little earlier. Just refresh because something seems to. Alright. We can also make a generated resource. Generate a resource about our team. Made up from Fabian. Fabian works for me, and we have Hank and we have Elke. Make our backstory. These bad placeholders for contact information. And maybe this could also include like look up information about where they might be, like our office locations. This is just going to do its thing. It's going to call it create resource function. And it just created that entire resource. And hopefully this link is fixed because it was broken like 2 minutes ago. There we go. We have our team page.
He even knows you.
Yeah.
Exceptional skills and
It's actually my
Nice. Yeah. Now we've been talking. This is also why we're very interested in the RAG, because right now it's like asking for information, so it needs to know what it's asking about, and if we can provide that information based on the prompt, then we already make it a lot smarter. But this has been very, very fun and very effective already at sort of generating slightly less shitty shit.
That's shitty shit.
Yeah. Right now you use OpenAI.
Mild shit.
Mild shit, yeah. You can select the model. I'm using 4.0 mini, so this is not even like the top tier model. This is the one that's cheap, so I don't rack up like lots of money in testing. Endpoint configurable, so this is also in theory compatible with Gemini and with DeepSeek and whatever other model. And this is a list of current tools, so these are the functions that I've got in here for the default example of getting the weather, getting all the details about a resource, finding resources by searching, which would be create values with array, and the create resource method function that I created in like 10 minutes just now here with presentation. That's basically what I've been working on, to try and encourage people to work together and make one big thing that's smarter, that's more capable, instead of everybody building their own little tiny awesome integrations all at once. It could also support other large language models, the OpenAI API integration is sort of like abstracted away. So anything that's not compatible with this standard chat completions API can also be added. And this is what a tool looks like, what a function looks like. It's all server side, it has a name, it has a description. The description is very important. This tells the model when to use and how to use a tool. So work on that is very important. We can make it use parameters, so it, for example, creating a resource, we tell it to provide us a title, the content, the template to use, etc. Tool parameters for configuration. And then finally we just have a run-to method that takes in whatever the model throws back at us and do the thing or look up the thing. Yeah, so this is a very quick demo. It's open source, it's on GitHub. AI kit. And I'd love to work with people tomorrow and make this better, see what directions something like this should take, and how we can make this work for everyone.